Hello everyone, this video will provide an overview of ArcGIS Pro and show where some of the more important tools and functions are located on the interface. So let's get started. So when ArcGIS Pro opens, it's going to open to the startup screen where it allows you to open up a previously existing project, or it allows you to create a new one. So you can see the recent projects over here, and then the new templates over here. But before we get to opening a map, I want to discuss two different areas of this interface. The first is up here in this corner. Notice that it shows our organizational account here, and it shows me as being signed into the organizational account. This is a really cool thing because it integrates your ArcGIS Online for Organizations account with ArcGIS Pro, where you can be tapping into your content that you have online. Also, when you then publish things from ArcGIS Pro, it puts them right in that organizational account. So the integration of the products is a lot cleaner than it used to be in ArcGIS Desktop. And I want to show you how to set this up if you haven't previously. The way that you would configure your organizational account is by coming down here to settings. Once in settings, if you go to portals, you're going to see that you have well, I have right now two different portals that I'm signed into, and I added these portals simply by clicking the add portal and then putting those URLs in there. So when you do this, put in this URL, the https://hack.maps.arcgis.com, and you have to put in the whole thing. You can't just put in the hackmaps.arcgis.com. You have to include the https and so forth. Put that in there, and it will connect you to your portal. If necessary, then go to the upper corner then to sign in. Just go to your back, and then you can sign in the corner. The other thing to draw your attention to is the licensing option here. This tells you how your product is licensed and what you are licensed to have. So you all should have an advanced license for ArcGIS Pro. It probably expires the same date as mine, because this is a college license. They last a year, then you have to refresh them. If you don't have the advanced account, let me know, because that's important. The advanced license gives you access to all the bells and whistles in ArcGIS Pro. So you definitely want that as we move through the semester. The other thing that you were given access to are some extensions. And I may not have given all of them to you, but I gave you many of them. But the ones that we are definitely going to need for the semester are going to be 3D Analyst, Image Analyst, Network Analyst, and Spatial Analyst. If you don't have some of the others, it's not a big deal, but I think, again, I gave you a little bit more than what I have here. So just verify that you have those. Now note, if you're not signed in up here, you're not going to see what you are licensed for, because it's connecting to your account in ArcGIS Online, because I configured your licenses through that. So you have to be signed in order to be accessing the licensing. So very important on that. Another note about the licensing. The way licensing is done has changed in ArcGIS Pro. Prior to Pro, in desktop, there was either a single-use license or a concurrent use license. A concurrent use is used for like labs or for organizations that have a lot of different users. It gives you a certain number of licenses that you have access to, and then once you hit that threshold, nobody else can get on, or you bump somebody off. So for instance, let's say an organization had 5 concurrent licenses. If that 6th person would try to get on, not going to happen. And that, again, that's how we use it in our labs at HACC, is that we would have like 300 concurrent licenses, and then once we hit that, which never even got close to happening, somebody would get bumped. The other type of license is a single-use license, and that's what you've all used in the past with ArcGIS Desktop. That's the license that you were given for classes. Even though it was a student eval copy, it's the same thing as a single-use license. So that's what you were given. So those are the 3 different ways that Pro can be licensed. The reason why we're doing the name user is because it gives you more ability to connect to your ArcGIS Online for Organizations content, and it just, I think the workflow is just so much cleaner having it that way. So that's why we're using that. Last thing to go to before we really delve into the interface is the options dialog. This is where you can change the way that ArcGIS Pro works for you. And while you may not want to use this now because you really haven't used Pro yet, know that it's here. So if you want to do some customization after you get to know Pro a little bit better, this is where you would do it. And some really common things that people do are even just setting what units you want to be the default. You know, really basic things. The other thing that's really popular is customizing the ribbon to make it to move things where you want things to be, or to add functionality that you want to be there. So just know that it's here, and you may not, again, use it immediately, but it is something that's really nice to have. I tend not to change my options on mine, only because in teaching, you know, a few different classes, I don't want my interface to look different than everyone else's. So I tend to refrain from some customizations, even though sometimes it is a little difficult to do that. So coming back here then to this startup screen, like I said, we can open up a new project, or open up a currently existing project, or start a new one. And I'm gonna first show how to just open one that already exists, just so we can kind of go through the interface, and I can show you some things a little bit better since there's already data in here and tabs and so forth. So my project opens, and immediately you see I have this digital elevation model. You might also notice that I have other tabs here. I also have one that's called satellite imagery, and when I click on it, it activates that particular tab. And then as I do that and go through, you can see that I have 4 different maps in this project. And that's one of the really nice things about ArcGIS Pro. Instead of having all your data frames listed here over in your table of contents, these are kind of like the new data frames that you see here. So you can see how that has changed from desktop to Pro, and I kind of like the new way, even though it took a few minutes to get acclimated to it. The other really nice thing about ArcGIS Pro, and this is something that none of you ever experienced because you never had the pleasure of working with ArcView back in the late 90s. The one really awesome thing about ArcView was that it allowed you to have multiple views and multiple layouts in one project. ArcGIS Desktop did not allow for multiple layouts in a project, which was something that frustrated many GIS users at the time, and we finally got the functionality back with Pro. So how you would add a layout to your map is by going to your Insert menu, and notice that you have access to a new layout. So you would just click New Layout, and I'm just going to pop the first one, and it adds a new layout, and notice that it adds a new tab here, just like it does with my views. Now, if I want to add a map to this, I just click Map Frame, and then it's listing all my data frames, for lack of a better word, here, and I pick which one that I want. So let's say I just want my DEM here. I just pick that, and then I draw a box where I want it to be, and you have your data in your layout. Now, like I said, the cool thing is you can have more than one layout in a project. So I can go and add another one should I choose. And here we have that other one. And again, I can do a map frame, and I can select what I want to be in there. And I can also add more than one map frame. So let's say that I want to have 2 maps in it. Like maybe you want an inset map and the main map. You can. That's how you would add those 2 maps. Now, if you look over here, you see that this is your layout, and this is saying what map frame it is, and same thing down here. I like to rename my stuff so that it doesn't just say layout 1, map 1, 2, 3, 4, because that makes it difficult to remember which is which. So like I would go down here and rename my layout satellite imagery layout, or whatever works for you. That way it changes it here. So that's just a little bit about maps and layouts and how those get added. Now, I want to go back to the map tab, because I think this is one of the more important tabs in terms of getting started, because this is kind of like where a lot of your main tools are located. This is how you navigate a map, and if you hover over the tool, it'll give you the shortcuts for things, like how to use your mouse to, pan, zoom, and zoom continuous, which is really nice. And then again, you can see you have, like, if you remember the tools toolbar from ArcGIS Desktop, you're seeing the same kinds of tools here. These are essentially your navigation tools. So again, very similar to what you would have on your tools toolbar here. Here is where you can add data. And one thing you probably haven't noticed, because I really didn't point it out, and I changed my views to not have base maps on everyone, but automatically when you add a new map, and let me just add a new map, it automatically will add a base map for you, and that isn't the same as in ArcGIS Desktop, that you have to actually manually add a base map. And I would kind of caution you on this a little bit, because I think the tendency for a lot of people is to keep base maps on everything, and they really don't belong on everything. There are certain times that they are appropriate and certain times that they are just not appropriate. They actually can be really busy up a map really quickly and makes things a lot more confusing than they need to. So just because it's there doesn't mean you have to keep it there. So keep that in mind. And this is especially true for graduated color maps. Base maps have no place on a graduated color map for 9 times out of 10. So it's a really good thing to remove it there. But this is where you can change your base maps if you choose. And then this is just like the add data button that we had in ArcGIS Desktop. This is how you would access your data. Now, I will say one thing about adding data that I have found in ArcGIS Pro that's a little persnickety, is that a lot of times it takes it a while for it to see the data in a folder. For instance, I have this data called sample data, where I just dumped a whole bunch of data that I can be using for demonstration purposes for classes. There are times that when I go to this, it shows up at empty, and you're like, what's going on? What you can do is just right-click in your view. It will be empty, and you'll have a refresh option. And I don't have it here just because my data is there. Or you can just click F5 on your keyboard, and it will refresh that folder. This is also true if you if you have your interface open and something's not showing up, like you just downloaded something and extracted it, all your data is showing up, but not the one that you just extracted, sometimes you just have to refresh it. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward, because that's going to happen a lot, because that's happens to me at least 10, 15 times a day. So it's not uncommon. But again, this is how you would add data to your map. So same as what you experienced in desktop. And I'll just add earthquakes to the map here. And this is just showing Pennsylvania earthquakes. So that's adding data. Now these tools here, these, like it says here, allows you to do selection. So this is where you can just do the manual select like you're used to doing. Like if say you want to learn a little bit about this particular feature, what's neat about this now is if I click on it and then go to attributes, the attributes will show up over here for that particular earthquake. So it's kind of nice in terms of how it does this selection. Also, just as a FYI, you get to the attribute table of a layer in the same way as you did in ArcGIS desktop. And again, you can see all of those attributes. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn how to work with attribute tables a little bit more. And I think you're going to find that they work a little bit nicer than they did in desktop. I think quite a bit nicer. So I hope you like that functionality as much as I do. But then again, you have your clear so that you can clear your selection and so forth. And notice how now you have this open over here. If you want to get rid of that, you just X out of it. You have your select by attributes here, which again, it will open up a new pane for that. And that's one of the new things to get used to, is that when you click almost anything, you're going to get a pane over here with the information for that particular tool. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen with this, and something that took me some time to get used to for whatever reason on that. But here, this allows you to build your query here, which is just a little bit of a different interface than what you were used to seeing. You have the same kind of thing with select by location. Again, the interface comes up over here, and this is where you would select your relationship that you're trying to set in your select by location. We will be working with select by location quite a bit this semester and delving into that more than we have in the past, because this is a spatial analysis class, and this is actually one of the biggest spatial analysis tools that there is. So we will be doing that. So this is your selection area, and something just to be cognizant of. Infographics are really cool and fun. This really gives you this geo enrichment where you can click on something and get information about that. And you can configure your infographics here by saying what you want, what variables you want, and then like the buffer type and all of that. So I'm just going to keep it as is. And then if I click on a map, I will get an infographic for that place that I just clicked. This is pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm going to be getting key facts on this, and that's again for where I click my mouse. It's giving me a 1 mile ring, and it's doing an infographic based on the parameters that were set in the configure infographics. And again, I kept it as a default, but you can change any of that. So you can see what you can get there. And you can change your template, which is really cool. So now if I want to get an employment overview, bam, I've got it. And it might take a second to open. And there you have it. And you can then export these in a number of different ways and add headers for all that good stuff. So this is functionality that you previously may have seen in Community Analyst Online and Business Analyst Online. Is now kind of ported over here as well. So again, notice the integration of products is really kind of sweet in what you can do with that. Measure. pretty sure you know what that does. Locate, it's kind of the same thing as the find tool was in desktop. So again, your map ribbon is kind of where a lot of your main tools are located. Like think of it as your tools toolbar and your standard toolbar kind of mushed together. We then have the insert menu, and this is where if you want to add a new map or a new layout, this is where you would add it. And notice when you click new map that you are, sorry, the drop down for new map, you get these different options. So when we're doing some 3D things, you'll be clicking the new global scene or local scene there. But like I said, 9 times out of 10 is new map. And then with the layout, you have the options of picking from any of these, which is nice that it's kind of set up for you already, but you can also customize your pages and so forth. That's what I'm going to talk about on here for now. We'll get into some of the weeds of this a little bit later, but those are the main takeaways from the Insert tab. The Analysis tab, I think the main takeaway here is knowing how to open up Arc Toolbox, which is by clicking on this, and you'll get your tools. Like right now, it's showing my favorites because these are ones that I've been using a bunch recently. But like if you click on Toolboxes, you'll get everything. So again, you can kind of go back and forth here to see what is available there. You have ready-to-use tools, which are just an additional set of tools that allow you to do an analysis, and some really cool ones are in there that we'll be using this semester, like the view shed, the service areas, and so forth. Feature analysis, notice that it's grayed out here because I don't have any features in this particular map. So if I would go back to vector and then click on one of my, come on, don't make me a liar. Click on one of my vector layers, it should be activated. I'm not sure why it's not activating, but it should be. And then same with like raster analysis. This allows you to do analysis if you have a raster data set that's activated and so forth. These tools in here are some of the more common analysis tools that are used, and you'll notice that a lot of these look similar to the ones that are in ArcGIS Online. For those of you that have explored the analysis tools in ArcGIS Online, probably the best and most awesome tool in here is Enrich, because this allows you to add attributes to a previously existing data set. For instance, like let's say, let's go to this, that we want to add some demographic data to our counties. If we click Enrich, this allows us to put different variables in there. So when I click that, these are the different categories of variables that I can be adding. So let's say that I want to be adding population data to my counties. I can just go to this and pick what I want to be added to that. And this is a whole rabbit hole we're going to go down at another time because of the mass amounts of data that is available there in these different categories. But like you can put things like unemployment rate, income data, tapestry data, crime, and so forth. So a really great way of adding attributes to your data without having to go and find it, do data joins, do all that really painstaking stuff. This makes it so insanely easy, especially because it's demographic data for the most part. So it really lets you do demographic analysis really a lot easier than it used to. But again, you can see that some of your more common geoprocessing tools are located in this area here. And so that's where I'll end on the analysis tab, because again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. View, some good things to take away from here, and I think this is probably the most important one, is the reset panes, because it takes you back to the start. When you first open up ArcGIS Pro. This is kind of what your interface will look like with your contents over here, your map or whatever here, and then your catalog. So that, like, you can be connecting to your data really easily. Your project geodatabase is here. So I like to go back to the reset panes for mapping just so I get all my good stuff in one area. If you want to be looking at the catalog pane, you just click that, which it's already there. If you want catalog view, that will open up the catalog in this area here so that you can look at things a little bit more closely. Contents, this is a really popular one. How many times have you turned off your table of contents accidentally and needed to get them back? Contents allows you to get your contents back. And then finally, on this particular ribbon, navigator, this puts the navigator here so that you can use this to navigate instead of some of the other tools. And I like to make it a little bit bigger because I'm blind. And then you can hit that little button and you get a few more abilities with the navigator. So I would encourage you to play with that as you're moving around in ArcGIS Pro. What I'm not going to get into too much today and with this is like the edit functionality. We will get into this in a lot more detail, but there is an edit tab that allows you to create and modify features. And I think you're going to like some of the edit tools, at least the modify ones when you're just editing and moving things around. It's really quite nice and really easy to use. So I think data editing becomes a lot easier in ArcGIS Pro than it was in desktop. There's the imagery tab, which for the sake of this class, we're probably not going to be using a whole ton in the remote sensing class, perhaps, but not in here. Share is one that we will be using quite a bit. The most common one will be export, where you go to export your map into one of the formats that we've been using previously and changing the resolution to something that's not 96. The other thing that we will be using is the project package and map package, and I will be explaining next week the difference between the two and which ones to use, and then also how you can be sharing the map as a web map to your organizational account. So really cool things on the share tab that we're going to be using quite a bit. And then finally, you notice that when I just clicked, a whole bunch of things went away here. Notice that when I click on any data layer, you might get a new set of tabs based on what it is that you're using. So because I'm on a feature, it's giving us appearance, label, and data. So this allows us to go to appearance and change the way that it's symbolized, put any filters that in terms of display that we want to put on it. Labeling obviously is exactly what it says. This is how you would label features. And then data. It just allows you to look at the attribute table and then do spatial joins and relates and all of those good things, export the table, all that. So when you're clicking on any of your data layers, note what you have available up here in this feature layer. Also, likewise, if we go to satellite imagery, and notice we'll click on that, notice that we get to different types of tabs with different options. Notice that we have stretch type here for the imagery. We have DRA, voice sampling, band combination. All of that is there because we are activating the raster data set. And likewise, you can see what you get when you are on data. So a little bit about that. Finally, just to, let me go to PA. Yeah, let me go to that. In terms of some of the things that you're going to be wanting to do probably early on is symbolizing data. So again, just note that when you are on one of these, there's multiple ways of doing it. If you right click on it and go to Symbology, your Symbology tab will open. Likewise, if you go to Appearance, you have your Symbology options here. One of the really cool things that I like, and let me go to this one to show this because it's really cool. And maybe let me put where the heck is it? It's really bad when you have to do this to find your tools. You're not quite familiar with them, as you or others. So here we are in Pennsylvania. Let me zoom to layer. And one of the new cool symbology types in Arc Pro is Heatmap. So before when we had a bunch of points, we would have to create a density map if we want to kind of see that density. Now we can do it in here, as it makes me a liar. But you can do a heat map in ArcGIS Pro, which is pretty nice. And actually, it's because I'm on the wrong one, I believe. There we are. Sorry about that. And give it a second. It's thinking. And there we have a quick and dirty density map, essentially. So it is, you know, kind of cool, some of the new features that are available. I will say in the first, few weeks of working with Pro, I do expect that you may be frustrated. Just hang in there with it. It's just a matter of getting used to where things are. What I've heard said quite a bit about ArcGIS Pro is that for those people who have used ArcGIS Desktop, the learning curve is actually larger than those who have not ever touched Pro, just because we're so acclimated to where certain things are in desktop, and we're so trained on how to use desktop that the migration to Pro is a little bit more difficult. But for those coming in with no previous knowledge, that is actually a really much better experience for users, which is ultimately what we want to hear. So that's my long-winded overview of ArcGIS Pro. I hope you enjoy the exercises, and I hope that you start getting comfortable with this. A lot of this I'm going to be learning along with you, so I may not know the answers to every single thing immediately because it's a retraining for myself as well, but I'll help out as much as I possibly can. So thank you, and have fun with the assignment this week.